Hi guys, Tappy, I hope you're all keeping well. Look at this, what a lovely sunny day we have in the leafy suburbs of Surrey. Fantastic. But that's not what this is about. This is what this video is about. Yes, the Renault 5 GT Turbo, but not just any Renault 5 GT Turbo, my Renault 5 GT Turbo. This is actually the third one of these that I have owned. And we're not just going to be walking around and pointing at this thing. No, we're going to get out for an actual drive in it. Yes, the thing is road legal. Hooray! It's not leaking fuel anywhere. It's got an MOT and it's driving really nicely. Big thanks to the guys at Renault Speed in Farnborough for helping out with this. If you've got any problems with your Renaults, they're the guys to see. But driving really well, and yeah, okay, you might look at this thing and think, wow, that's not really very aesthetically pleasing by today's modern sleek standards, but believe me when I say these cars hold a very special place in a lot of people's hearts, not just in the UK but around the world. Big following in the Netherlands, obviously in France too, where these things hail from. They're just fun, a lot of character. And back in the day, these were kind of the hot hatches to own. We'll discuss all about the driving, what they're all about, the bit of their history when we get out for a drive in this thing. But really looking forward to it. Fingers crossed, it shouldn't break down. It's been driving really well, but you never know. Old car, very old car, 30 years. Anything can happen, right? So let's do it. So here we are, actually out and about in the Renault 5 GT Turbo, and yes, probably the first thing you notice on camera is I'm way too big for this car. I'm practically sat in the back, a bit high tower, Police Academy-esque. I've always been too tall for these cars, but I've never let that get in the way because I've always wanted one. The first time I went out in one, Scott Smith, if you're watching back in the day, I was just blown away by it. Another mate of mine had a really nice one, a guy called Chris, with Antera alloys on it, which just looked the part. Both glacial white cars. We'll come on to the colours in a bit. But I've just always loved them, and you know, even being too tall to drive in them, realistically, I mean, you know, knees are a bit cramped and what have you. I just had to make it work. Had to save my money and get in one so I could drive about in a Renault 5 GT Turbo and enjoy it. And here I am again, many years later, out in one right now, and it's amazing how jaded you can become when you're used to modern technology and all the mod cons, things like power steering, automatic gearboxes. None of that in this at all. One thing it does have going for it is, you'll probably notice on the cameras right now, is the visibility. The all-round visibility of this thing is brilliant because it's tiny. You can basically peek over, it feels like you can peek over the edge, literally. But all those mod cons just absolutely evaporate in this. They do not exist. So manual choke, no power steering, manual gearbox, you feel every little movement or noise that the car makes. So let's look at the history of these things. This car is the Renault 5 GT Turbo, a Phase 2 Renault 5 GT Turbo to be specific. The first of which, obviously, the Phase 1, which was created in 1985. Yes, 1985, in order for Renault to compete with the likes of Peugeot, the infamous 205 GTI, the 1.6, 1.9 variations of that, and of course the Golf GTI. And when it came about, the Phase 1, it was kind of blowing everything away. It had a 0 to 60 time of 7 seconds, which in those days was absolutely crazy. I know by modern standards it's not that much. I mean, there's diesels that will outperform this easily, but it was something at the time that nobody'd ever really experienced. And likewise, when I got in one in the late 90s, I was kind of like, wow, what is this? I've got to get one. It was just that much fun. So they created the Phase 1. Phase 1 looks relatively similar, but not as fancy in terms of the trim. Also wasn't as reliable. Didn't have a water-cooled turbo, so the life on the turbo was really short and just not as well polished. This one was the Phase 2. The Phase 2 came about in 1987 and had a few adjustments, tweaks, so things like water-cooled turbo, lots more trim around it to make it look a bit nicer. Actually, a bit slower on the 0 to 60. I think it was about 7.6-ish seconds, but still very fast. In terms of the power, these standard 120 brake horsepower. Again, you'd look at that by today's standards and go, that's nothing. Well, back in the days, it was quite a bit. And don't forget, these cars weigh in at 800 kilos. And that's something you really notice when you're out in them. My word. I mean, I love them, I really do, but it feels like the whole thing is literally about to fall apart at any given time around you. I genuinely say that, hand on heart. I mean, they rattle, they crash, they kind of hop around the road, you can hear everything, you know, it's like driving around in a baked bean can with an engine. How many of these are left? Well, that is a good question. A question I'm going to try and answer right now. So, the pretty unreliable site, How Many Are Left, which looks at DVLA data to see how many of particular cars are left, says there's about 280 or so on the road. And then of those, a further 1,200 are SORMed. Now, the thing is, you don't know what status, or A, how reliable that data is, or B, what status the SORM cars are. You know, are they just chassis that are sat there rusting away, project cars that are never going to see the light of day again, unfortunately? So, I don't know. Your guess is probably as good as mine, but I'm going to say maybe 500 or so, or less, maybe 400 or so roadworthy-ish cars that could get out and about. And this is one of them. Everything still working very nicely. They were renowned for their tunability, these things. They really were. They were fantastic, and you could probably get about 170 brake out of them before you had to start adjusting things like, you know, the fueling and carbs. That's just by winding up the boost. Obviously, you're going to shorten the turbo and put a bit of stress on the engine, but they were very, very tunable. And back in the day, you never ever saw a standard one. They all had wheels on, they had body kits. There was B5 GTT, the GT tuning version, which was bonkers. I think 200 and something brake that was breaking all the records, but you know, no part on that was the same. If you saw it now, you'd be like, wow, that is quite crazy design. I'll see if I can cut to a screenshot of it. But you know, none of these back in the day were standard. They were all tuned up, all tweaked, and as a result, it's hard now to find one that is standard. And a lot of people that have them now are very much in the business of bringing them back to a standard car, which is kind of great to see, because I think you kind of forget how good they look. Just standard alloys, you know, Speedline alloys with the Uniroyal tyres, really good. So, what are these things like to drive? Well, an awful lot of fun. I mean, I can probably liken it to a go-kart. It's the closest thing, right? Everything is raw, no assistance. It's just you and the car and whatever you're doing into that car. They're a bit of a handful sometimes, believe it or not, back in the day, especially in the wet. When they go, kind of the whole car drifts. So the best thing is just to keep it turned into the corner and keep the throttle on, just to kind of, because all the weight is on the front, right? The engine's in the front, and there's virtually no weight in the back, unless, of course, I'm sat in it when I'm probably adding 15.5 tons to the back end. Yeah, love a bit of cake. But really kind of raw. And in terms of, you know, putting your foot down, I'll do that now and we'll see what happens. Third gear, you'll hear it. Hear that whoosh as well as you come off, the kind of chirping sound. That's actually called compressor stall. It's not a dump valve on this. I know the rage back in the day was to put dump valves on. Dump valve releases the pressure between the turbo and the inlet body to let it not harm the turbo, but this is standard ish, apart from the air filter. But that noise you hear is called compressor stall. So what is actually happening there? Well, when the throttle body is open, the butterfly valve is open and air can get into the engine under load, under boost, all you hear is a constant whoosh. When you come off, you're closing that valve, that throttle body, and the air pressure builds up and has nowhere to go apart from back out through the turbo. So it rushes back out through the turbo, and then the pressure reduces in the inlet side, and that cycle happens over again really quickly, which is why you get that flapping sound that rally cars are effectively renowned for. And you hear it more on this because it's not fully standard in that respect. As I say, this has had uprated cooling capability added to it. So I think it's fair to say that the original versions of these weren't the best at keeping cool. They really suffered from running hot sometimes. And the standard air filter, the radiator, the cooling just wasn't really up to scratch. And if your radiator fan wasn't kicking in, which is a common problem on these, they'd overheat really quickly, and then you're looking at head gasket. I want to do a video at some point in the future about reliability of these things and owning and buying. Get a lot more content out of it, right? And help us out. Do share this, do like it, because we've got to keep the dream of these things alive, right? It's going to do good things for the residuals, for the marketplace, and just people who enjoy them, right? Great to see them out and about and being used. I can't actually believe right now I'm driving along in a Renault 5 GT Turbo in 2022. It's quite a feeling. And yeah, I'm taking it easy. I'm looking after it. I'm not going to thrash the G out of this thing and break it. It's going to be looked after, get it down to meets, and just generally enjoy the car and look after it. This car is 122,000 miles, and believe it or not, 10 owners. Yes, 10 actual owners. That's a lot, but I like to think every single one of those loved and cherished this car, and I'm absolutely sure they did. It was completely rebuilt before I picked it up. A complete rebuild, and it was in very, very good condition. Still is in very good condition. Everything works. Even the lights on warning buzzer still works, which is a big surprise. That's not something I'd expect to still work, but really cool car. And I do love the community. There's a great Facebook group, good Instagram group, I think with 10,000 or so followers on both, which is really good to see. So if you are a fan of these cars, do share this, please. Let's get the visibility of these things up, keep the hype strong, and generally have them well looked after, well nourished, well kept for years to come. So that is it. A quick video, a quick drive in the Renault 5 GT Turbo, and it got us here without breaking down. Question is, will it get us back? Let's find out. Really appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like, share, keep the memory alive, please do. And I'll see you soon on the next one. Bye for now.